So 6 years ago when we're recording this, I lost my home in a wildfire. It was really the first season where we had these really massive wildfires. At the time, it was like the second or third most damaging wildfire in California history. 2017, a fire broke out in the area that I live now, and that fire burned, I think it was about 5,000 houses, which was unheard of at the time. And then the year after that, the worst fire in California history so far, burned 10,000 houses. And those were numbers that, as a kid, were completely unfathomable. Like that would never have been possible. That just would not have happened. And throughout California, really have this changed relationship with nature and with this season. And it's definitely something that I've had to grapple with, because it's still a season that I love, and there's still so much about it that I feel really spiritually and emotionally connected to. And yet it is changed, and there is this darker element.
Hi, my name's Ashleigh. I'm a woman who practices witchcraft. I have a really deep passion for all things witchcraft, occultism, folk magic, and I truly believe that having these interests has made me more of an activist in reversing climate change. And I would really like to take this opportunity to inspire other people to maybe add a little bit of witchcraft or occultism into their everyday. It does absolutely have an effect on how you view the earth. I have 100% become more interested in the world around me through witchcraft.
I would say that I do call myself a witch, a green witch, an eclectic witch. Like, I don't hold tightly to the title though, because I want my practice to be loose. Like, I think just putting a crystal in my bra makes me witchy, learning about the energies and the connection. That is where my spirituality lies. And I really think it is more just about like owning your power and practicing your craft in whatever way suits you.
So I identify as a cottage witch, which for me really means that my home, my sanctuary, my sacred space are really at the heart of my practice. And a big part of my practice is definitely working with the seasons and the moon phases. And it's really interesting because working with the seasons now with climate change, like the seasons are not necessarily exactly even the way they were when we were kids.
The fact that last summer it was up to 31 degrees in summer, which is not normal for this country. And even though it was nice to be able to enjoy the sunshine, I think it was definitely panic stations, because I couldn't help but think it's not supposed to be this warm. And I think that was a massive alarm bells ringing that climate change is happening. It's warming up. The country was a lot warmer than it has been previously during the summer. And that was really scary.
A lot of times people will talk about feeling kind of disconnected from the wheel of the year as we've celebrated it for generations as witches. Either where they are, their own climate doesn't necessarily reflect that cycle of the seasons, or because of climate change, or both. You kind of have to dig deep, and you have to both recognize that those cycles have started to shift and they are changing in some ways terribly, but that we also can still hold on to some piece of it.
On a daily basis, I will get up in the morning and I'll note down the weather. I'll note what sign the moon and the earth are in, and I'll make a note of what the world looks like around me. So then during the day, I can note any changes that I see. Those are positive, connecting things that you get from witchcraft and living a more nature-based, spiritual lifestyle.
Having a practice where you feel a connection to nature is obviously, it's going to help you have a reverence and respect for nature, and then you don't want to negatively impact it. My practice and my craft, and I think everybody's essentially, is personal power, and included in that is personal responsibility, knowing that you have an impact not only on your life, but on other people's lives. And you see that connection, and the more you see it, the more it just expands.
It wasn't until I really started to pay attention and started to see like those leaves starting to change at the end of July, beginning of August. It's like this promise that, it's like the earth saying, yes, I'm changing and things are being done to me that I'm changing and I can't fix that. But it's like this promise that, I still will move through my seasons. I still will move through my cycles, even if it's in a little bit different way.
It's the seasons of astrology. It's the seasons of what we feel right now. And I even for a while was doing like collective spells on my Instagram. And I did it based off of, the time of year. I'm like, I'm going to go pick some cherry blossoms for this spell.
I had actually gotten away from my practice for about 2 years in college. And it was about 6 months after the fire that I finally came back to my practice. And I realized that I really needed that spiritual support. I had gone through 6 months of the deepest grief that I've ever experienced. And I didn't have any kind of spiritual support or any kind of faith to get me through it. And immediately I realized that it was what I had been missing.
Being eco-conscious lends you self-awareness, it gives you confidence and empowers you. You're a divine being at that, when you're in your craft and you're a spiritual person, that's a constant reminder that you are divine and that you have limitless powers.
I think that going through something like I've been through, it would be very easy to blame nature, right? And to blame the earth and to say, Mother Nature did this to me. And in many ways, that's true. Mother Nature destroyed everything I ever owned. But it's not her fault, right? It's not really any one person's fault or any one entity's fault. It just is. And so having that connection to nature, that spiritual connection, definitely really helped me to not feel like I needed to lay blame in that way.
There has to be a give, and I have to give back to the earth to be able to use those energies and to keep it a positive relationship. And I realized that quite early on and started to try and make changes in my everyday life to prove that I deserved to be tapping into those powers.
I connect to nature in order to reset and to go out and collect those items that you need, whether it's like rosemary, I'm the type of witch, yes, I have a few crystals. A few is an understatement. I have like 20 or 30 crystals, but like nowadays, I think as like I've tuned into myself, I'm really just like, oh, that's a pretty rock. Oh, that's a pretty seashell, So it's more like ethically sourced and you're more connected to it when you kind of just go out and get it yourself.
I grow my own herbs in the garden that we use both in cooking, which could be kitchen witchery because you're cooking with love and those energies go into the food that you eat, which then make you feel good. But also I use my herbs in my spell jars and my homemade incense, which again means that nature has grown those for me. I've helped grow them and the energy's already in there.
I absolutely love being able to take something from the process of, I planted it, I tended it and it grew and I harvested it and I hung it up in my kitchen and I put it into a jar and then I made something with it. Just really that step-by-step process is just so beautiful and so simple.
People walk around every day and they have no idea what plant this is, what plant that is. They're like, oh, that's a pretty flower, but they would never know that that's an edible flower. That's very empowering to learn that sort of knowledge and to seek that sort of knowledge out. So yes, I highly recommend foraging.
I really think that awareness is one of our greatest tools as witches. I couldn't in a million years tell you, when fall started or when there was lightning in the years before the fire. But since then, since it has increased so dramatically, I can absolutely tell you major changes. And that's because I've had this awareness of it. Just paying attention in those ways does make you aware of climate change in this really subtle and really meaningful way where you're like, this isn't something abstract that I'm reading an article about. I can see it.
We have just forgotten how to listen to our bodies, how to listen to nature, how to connect with other people. Spirituality helps you get there and it helps you connect with yourself in a way that isn't scary.
Even when something terrible happens, nature regenerates itself. The spring after the fire, my fire, the wildflowers that year were incredible, like nothing anyone had ever seen. I think that promise is such a note of hope and a note of truth that even if things change beyond recognition, the earth is always going to continue.